Hey guys, you have tuned in to another episode of the Coastwatch Football Podcast. It's of course the weekly show where we chat all things A-League and the Central Coast Mariners. And we are now currently just over 3 weeks until the kickoff of the A-League season. Excitement is building, of course. And again, we have so much to cover. So let's jump straight into the news for you. And Channel 10 have announced their commentary team for the upcoming season. And obviously, a lot of people are really curious to see how Channel 10 go with the broadcast this year. Obviously, taking over the broadcast rights the A-League, of course, the A-League is going to be broadcast across Channel 10 and Paramount Plus, the streaming service. So here's some of the names that have been listed. And the big one, of course, is Simon Hill, returning as the voice of the A-League for this season. He'll be joined by Andy Harper. Tara Rushton has joined over from Fox. Archie Thompson has been included. Alex Brosk, Luke Wilkshire, Mike Milligan, Bruce Jitte. These are just some of the names that have been listed. So it's interesting sort of seeing the talk across the internet, the reaction to some of these names being announced. Particularly, people like Archie Thompson. And you know what? This is an unpopular opinion. I actually don't mind Archie Thompson because I think he's just a bit of a character. And I think back to if you're watching the NRL Grand Final, just like this year's Grand Final just a few weeks ago, and there's a hilarious moment in the post-game interviews when Jonathan Thurston, for me, Archie Thompson is almost like Jonathan Thurston in a way, where they're former players, they're now like becoming on-field reporters. And they just make really random mistakes. And Jonathan Thurston was forgot to move the mic to the play. It was hilarious. You have to go check it out if you haven't seen it. But I sort of like that. We sort of almost need those memey moments, and Archie Thompson provides that. So he's been included, and I do like the players that have, again, some of the more of the former players that have been included in Alex Brosk, Luke Wilkshire, Mark Milligan, Bruce Jitte. All of them have been involved in some of the pre-game and post-game chat for the Socceroos games that Channel 10 have broadcast so far, and looking really good. They all have good football knowledge. So a decent lineup for me. I'm pretty happy with that. And again, people talking about, it's actually interesting to see how many people are happy that Brenton Speed isn't involved. I personally, again, I actually like Brenton Speed. I think he's a really, really knowledgeable commentator. But it's looking like that it's going to be Simon Hill and Andy Harper, sort of the main guys when it comes to those primetime games. In transfer news as well, there has been some player movement, not as much as the previous weeks. Obviously, I feel like in the last couple of episodes, we just spent a solid, 5-10 minutes just talking about play movement. But the big one has been Melbourne Victory have signed Italian striker Francesco Margiotta. He's a 28-year-old. He came up through the Juventus Academy and, spent most of his career playing in Italy, spent some time in Switzerland as well. And, I think this was the missing piece for Melbourne Victory. I've spoken about it a little bit here on the podcast that I think, they've put together such a good team, but they were just lacking that star striker. And again, we have to wait and see with these foreign players coming in, whether they can settle into the A-League quickly and, get used to the heat, get used to the pace of the game here in Australia as well, because it's certainly a different game. So it'll be interesting to see how Margiotta settles into the A-League. In other news, and this is a retirement news, Adam Federici has retired from football. And again, this is the second retirement that has sort of caught people off guard. Stephen Taylor at Wellington Phoenix being the first one. Federici, for me, was one of the best goalkeepers last season. And especially considering how, we're reasonably close to the kickoff of competitive football here in Australia. Federici's pulled out, apparently due to injury. So, we wish him all the best, of course, Adam Federici. And, he, of course, made his appearances for the Socceroos over his career as well. But a little bit of concern for the Bulls there in terms of the goalkeeping department. What are they going to do? Are they going to try and bring someone in, or do they promote Nick Suman? It's some interesting choices to be made there down at MacArthur. Sticking to the west of Sydney and talking about Jack Rodwell. Jack Rodwell, of course, former Everton, Manchester City, Sheffield United player. And he, of course, in recent days has been linked to a move to MacArthur FC and Wanderers. It has been announced just recently that he has opted for Western Sydney Wanderers. I don't think the deal has gone through just yet, but it's looking pretty likely that in the coming days, or potentially maybe by the time this podcast has been released, least Jack Rodwell has been confirmed as another signing for the Wanderers. And again, just strengthening that squad even further. For me, Wanderers are looking so strong this year, and plenty of depth across their side. Brisbane Roar have signed winger Nick Olsen, and this is an interesting signing because he's got quite an interesting trajectory, Nick Olsen, because he started off in the Western Sydney Wanderers Academy and spent some time in the MPL level 2 in some Sydney clubs in the MPL, and then actually went over to Kuwait and had an opportunity in Kuwait for a couple of years, and now in his mid-20s has returned back to the A-League. And Brisbane Roar, I think Brisbane again a side that maybe just need that little bit of depth. So whether we'll see them bring in a couple more signings before the season starts as well. But just strengthening the wing departments. So Nick Olsen, another player to join the A-League. Sticking with Brisbane Roar, they have just announced the short-term loan of centre-back Anton Mlinaric from Sydney FC, the 19-year-old defender, again strengthening the depth there at the Roar. And in some Mariners news as well, Manny Agwek has been linked with a club, a young attacker who has recently played for Western United. Actually featured in our pre-season friendly against Western Sydney Wanderers. So it'll be interesting to see him, and there's a couple other names floating around, just some youngsters that might be signing with the Mariners, potentially some scholarship deals in the coming weeks. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that as well. And again, nothing to report regarding Mateus Maresh. Of course, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, pretty much, I feel like it's been every podcast for the past 4 or 5 weeks now. We've talked about Mateus Maresh, this Brazilian striker who's been linked with the Mariners. Nothing confirmed as of yet, but I think we can expect something. If it does happen, it has to happen soon, right? We're getting closer and closer to kickoff. And, don't forget, he's going to go through his 2-week quarantine. But I'm expecting for it to go through. I think it'll happen. It sounds like they're just getting the visa and stuff sorted out. But we'd love for him to come to the club. Just really, again, just strengthening that attacking line for the Mariners for this year. In the FFA Cup, Brisbane Roar defeated Lions FC 4-0 on this past weekend to secure their place in the quarterfinals. Both A-League sides, Adelaide United and Brisbane Roar, who of course have been playing through their FFA Cup campaigns, have secured their quarterfinals places. And of course, only a couple of weeks away until a whole bunch of A-League sides get their FFA Cup campaigns kicked off, including the Central Coast Mariners, who face Blacktown City, of course, in Mudgee. And in the final piece of news, there's been some third kits released from Adelaide United and Western Sydney Wanderers. We're pretty much completing, I guess, the run of kits from all the clubs, of course. They're sort of trickling out some of these, the goalkeeper kits and the third kits that we're seeing now. The Adelaide United one looks really dope. I think they're calling it salmon. This really sort of nice soft pink colour. Looks dope. Not a colour that we see that often in the A-League. I really, really like it. And then the Western Sydney Wanderers third kit, which I don't like as much as the Adelaide United one, but still kind of cool. An interesting design with all the lines moving around, but doesn't look all that bad. So that completes the news for this week. Nothing too much else going on that has been too eventful. But of course, we are edging our way closer to the start of the season. Cannot wait. And we're keeping our eyes out as well, because I had some people message me about ticket news in terms of round one and when tickets are going to go on sale. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything, I think we would usually expect tickets to go on sale, almost now, right? There's like a few weeks out, but the pandemic is also, everything is different in the current world we live in. So it might be a little bit closer to the start of the campaign, maybe 1 or 2 weeks out. Is when we can see ticket sales open up. But let's jump into the topic for today. And this is one that I wanted to touch on. After talking, of course, last week we had on the podcast Mariners defender Noah Smith. And if you haven't checked that one out, I'll make sure to link the video in the description show so that you can go ahead and watch that if you are interested. But we spent a little bit of time talking about the F3 derby. And, it got me thinking about some of the past F3 derbies that we've had. And, there's been some good memories from the Mariners and some not so good memories from a Mariners point of view as well. So I want to just sort of relive some F3 derby moments and almost do a little bit of a preview just to really get us hyped for round one. I know we're still a few weeks away, but that's not going to stop us from talking about, of course, probably our biggest fixture in the A-League, the F3 derby. It's our rivalry. It's quite a unique rivalry. So I want to jump into some head-to-head stats first of all, and these are actually pretty amazing, these stats. So together in the A-League, we've played 53 games with Newcastle Jets, and 17 wins for the Mariners, 18 wins for the Jets, and 18 draws. So it's as even as it gets. And it's the same story with the goals. 63 goals Mariners, 64 goals for the Newcastle Jets. That's probably the closest derby in Australian football at the moment. I didn't even realize it was all that close. I know there's been plenty. Obviously, there was a number of games there when Newcastle Jets smashed us a few seasons ago. We don't like to remember that one as Mariners fans, but and Mariners, of course, have had their success in the F3 derby as well. But yeah, it's in recent years where the Jets have really reigned supreme. The Mariners have only won 3 F3 derbies in the last 12 meetings between the two sides, and Newcastle Jets had a really solid sort of winning streak. We're undefeated for quite a while there. And we look back to, it's good to look back to some of the recent clashes, last season. And, for me, I mean, this is one of my first, prominent memories of the F3 derby, and it's round 1 of last year. It's New Year's Eve. It's the first match of the season. And of course, Alu Kowal scoring that header goal, just looping it over Jack Duncan. I think that for me really kick-started Alu's career at the Mariners. From there, he just continued that form. It was really important that, he got sort of opened his account early on in the A-League and did that in round 1 in that F3 derby. And of course, that 3 points set us up for the fantastic season that we had last campaign. But winding back the years now, we're going to go right back to 2008. And this is really for me, and I was very young at the time. I would have been 12 years old. So at the time of this game, 2008, it of course is the major semi-final, second leg. And I actually remember going to the first leg with my family up there in Newcastle and losing 2-0. And of course, we had back then in the A-League, we had the two-leg system and the major minor semi-final. It's very different to how it is now. But the Mariners pulling out that 3-0 win. And, I remember Sasho Petrosky, John Aloisi, Adam Kwasnik, these players being involved. And, that the massive comeback. And I remember it being a massive crowd too. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was like, I think it was over 18,000. It was one of the biggest crowds we'd ever seen. Still to this date at Surgico Stadium. It was absolutely bouncing. And just a fantastic comeback after being 2-0 down and to pick it up, to turn it around and go 3-0. Just a really fond memory. Like that was one of my, that 2008, that 07-08 season is one of my sort of earliest memories of the Mariners. And of course we played that grand final, but as Mariners fans, again, we don't want to talk about that too much because of course Newcastle Jets picking up the win in that grand final. Of course, that same grand final where Danny Vukovic sort of slapped the referee. I don't know if you call it a slap. It's a bit of a weird one when you look back at it. I guess it is sort of a slap. He was like running and sort of just, it was almost like he high-fived his body in a way. I don't know, but yeah, man, that's some of my earliest memories of the F3 derby. And then the one actually that stands out to me in recent memory as well, and this is a bit of a random one, I guess. But when we actually beat the Jets up there in Newcastle 3-2 at the back end of the 18-19 season, and this was one of Stagic's first games in charge of the Mariners, and I believe it was Chris Harold was one of the players that got on the score sheet that day as well. Obviously, in that season, we really, really struggled, picked up the wooden spoon. But that F3 derby, an entertaining one. And, it just goes to show no matter how we are performing in a season, anyone can win an F3 derby. I mean, I think that's the case in all of the derbies across the A-League. We've seen that in the Sydney derby, obviously Sydney FC being, finishing up the top of the ladder most seasons these recent years. Wanderers have been really successful in the derby of late, and so it's always an exciting time regardless of where teams are on the ladder. But I'm really hoping that we can get to a point where, I think the F3 derby for the last few years has diminished in its hype, in its I don't want to say credibility, because the fans still love it and the players still love it, and with players like Matty Simon. Jason Hoffman on the Newcastle side of things. These players are really, these experienced campaigners who have played in a number of F3 derbies. It's all about those players and the grittiness and the challenges, man. We love it. and the fans, of course, get really, really into it as well. But hopefully we can get to a point where, like, I always think, how epic would it be if we did see an F3 derby when both sides are maybe challenging for a place in the top 6? Maybe we could see that this season. It's always, at least, I feel like at least Newcastle and Mariners are towards the bottom of the ladder. That seems to that's at least how it's been for the past decade or so. Until all the way going back to 2008 when we both made it to the grand final. But because I just imagine that would create so much more hype. Imagine fighting for a finals place with your rival would be absolutely epic. But we are, of course, looking ahead to this round 1 fixture, and it's so even heading into it, of course, as I mentioned with those head-to-head stats. But I want to go ahead now, and we're going to throw in some predicted lineups, and this is an early sort of lineup prediction, and I'm going to be doing some more of these throughout the coming weeks about predicting maybe some sides that will be starting, that we can see starting across some of these A-League clubs. Starting off with, of course, the mighty Central Coast Mariners. I can see a back line including Mark Birigidi in goals, Stormroo, Ruan Tongyik, Kai Rolls, and Noah Smith. I think that's a pretty solid defence. Whether we do maybe see Matt Hatch start at left back over Noah Smith, possibly. But I think that's probably our strongest back four. In midfield, and this is where it gets a bit more you can sort of play around with things a bit when it comes to midfield and in attack as well. I've got Cy Goddard starting on the right. I think we'll start with I think we'll play a 4-4-2 by the way, but I think we'll see Cy Goddard start on the right, Nisbet and Bozanic in the middle, and I think we'll see Benny and Kololo start on the left wing. The preseason game that we played against the Wanderers just a couple days ago on the weekend, which of course we lost that preseason game, but both Goddard and Kololo starting in that game, getting some decent minutes, which is good to see. I think they'll both start on the wings. And then up front, I think this is where we'll see something different as well. I think we will see Urenya and Nikolai Muller play together up front, and Matt Simon utilised as an impact player off the bench. When we think back to when Simon was playing at Sydney FC, that's really how he was utilised. Hey, he was coming off the bench and was thrown on, whether it was the last 10 minutes to sort of rattle up the opposition and create some chances. So I think maybe that's how we'll see Simon used for this campaign as well. But I'm so keen to see this Muller-Urenya combination. I think with Urenya, he seems like such an intelligent player, Urenya, as well. Some of his runs that he was making, obviously his passing, his link-up play with his teammates around him, with Simon especially, he seems like a smart footballer on the pitch. And, combine that with someone with the quality of Nikolai Muller, who's a class player in attack, who I think his best role is a playmaker, Nikolai Muller, connecting with a striker. And I'd like to see them too, starting up top. And I think there's a good chance we could. If not, maybe Simon does come in and maybe Muller does start in midfield for, bench Benny Kololo or something like that. And then on the bench for the Mariners, I think we'll see, of course, Yaron Souza, Dan Hall, Lewis Miller, Matt Hatch, Max Ballard, Matty Simon, and I think we'll see Damien Sekenis on the bench as well, young striker. My Newcastle predicted lineup. And this one, a little bit trickier, of course, and with the Newcastle Jets bringing in so many new players, very, very hard to predict. But I'm going to go for Jack Duncan, Jason Hoffman, Jordan Elsey, Matty Yerman, and Dane Ingham. I think I can see them running a back four. To be fair, I don't have any insight in terms of what sort of systems Newcastle Jets are playing at the moment. And of course, we haven't been able to see them play in public as of yet. But we are at least hearing an attacking brand of football. Last season, predominantly, they were playing with that sort of that back three system. But with some of the when you look at the personnel that they have as well, that's maybe an indication in terms of what sort of system they'll play as well. There's a lot of attacking players, especially some of the foreign players that they brought in, wingers, attacking midfielders, strikers. I think it's an indication that maybe we could see a 4-2-3-1 system, or maybe potentially like a 4-3-3. Again, we'll have to wait and see. But that's the back line for me for the Jets. I think in midfield, we'll see Angus Thurgate, Jordan O'Doherty, and Arquez, this new a Spanish midfielder who has arrived at the club as well. And then up front, it's really, I mean, anyone could start, but I think we'll see Becker start, and Valentino Yule and Sia Travanis. This apologies if I'm pronouncing some of these names incorrectly as well, but of course these players are unknown to A-League fans at this stage. But some of these European players as well have some decent pedigree. And then, if we look at their bench, I can see, Noah James, Riley Warland, Dylan Manane, Ben Kantorowski, of course, has been missed out most of last campaign with injury. Potentially we'll see him back involved in the playing squad. Former Mariner, Sam Silvera, and it hurts me to say, but I think it will see him involved in the matchday squad as well. Pena, the Brazilian midfielder Pena, and Olivia Bumal as well. So, yeah, man, I mean, I could be way off with that Jets lineup. But I don't know if there's any Newcastle Jets fans watching at the moment. Feel free to drop in the comments section if you've got maybe a potential starting lineup for your Newcastle Jets side. Who would you like to see in your starting lineup? Because considering that it is almost entirely a new squad, it's very hard, very, very difficult to predict. But looking at those two teams, going face to face, again, very, very even. And, if I'm going to go for a score prediction, I think it's going to be close. It has to be close, as we've mentioned with the head-to-head stats. I think it could be really, really entertaining, though. I think it'll be an epic F3 derby, and I reckon Mariners will just pip it 3-2. 3-2. That would be an epic way to start off the campaign with a high-scoring matchup there. Maybe Urenia or maybe Maddie Simon coming on late to grab the winner to win it 3-2 would be absolutely epic. We cannot wait for it though, and it is not too far away. So hopefully some of that little mini preview is going to get you hyped for the F3 derby if you are a Mariners or Newcastle Jets fan. And of course, we'll be doing our proper preview and then talking about everything in depth when we do get closer to the kickoff of round one. Let's jump into some fan questions though. And of course, again, guys, thank you so much for sending me questions and again, just supporting the podcast and the page. I appreciate it so much. I can't say thank you enough because I'm really enjoying making this content for you guys, and it's great to see you guys enjoying it. Whether you've been watching the YouTube videos, catching the daily A-League content on TikTok or on Instagram, wherever you are. Thank you so much just for supporting, and because that's what this is all about. We're trying to grow the A-League. We're trying to grow the support for Australian football, and it's great to see that the audience is out there for it. So let's jump to the fan questions. This first one comes in from Jacob on Instagram, who asks, is Nikolai Muller the most promising new asset to the Central Coast? And I've touched on this a little bit in terms of Nikolai Muller and his importance to the side, I think, this season. And, if he stays fit, because that's a question as well, if he stays fit and can keep his form and stays consistent up to a decent level, and I think he can. Like, he's a quality player. He's played many games at top flight in Germany. He's going to be massive. He's going to be massive. He's going to be I think he'll be one of the most underrated signings in the league this season. Wanderers, I don't think he quite hit his heights. We did see some glimpses from him, scored some absolute bangers at Wanderers. But, in this Mariners side, he could really be the creative player we've craved for so long. Last year, Danny De Silva sort of provided that off the left-hand side. But we haven't really had like a solid out-and-out number 10 since, I don't know, if you want to go as far back as Tom Rogic. That's probably where you'd have to go back, the Tom Rogic, Michael McGlinchey days. So, yeah, man, Nikolai Muller is going to be massive for the club this year. Early prediction for the top 6, and this is sent in from the Common Football fan account on Instagram. Thanks for sending the question, guys. And I feel like, again, this is one of those things that I sort of bring up every podcast now, predicting the top 6, because it's constantly changing, and we will have a locked. I'm going to be doing a video soon about my like full ladder prediction for this season. But at the moment, the way it stands, Melbourne City first, Sydney FC second. They haven't changed yet. I can see Western Sydney Wanderers finishing third. Fourth, I'm going to go Melbourne Victory. I think they'll have a big season under Tony Popovich. Fifth, MacArthur FC. Sixth, Central Coast Mariners. I'm still sticking with Mariners at sixth. And it's hard, man. It's hard because we don't know. We don't know because again, we finished third last season after people predicted us to pick up the wooden spoon. But I could be way off with those predictions as well, and they probably will change in the coming weeks. But at the moment, that is how it stands. Another question in here on Instagram: what does Matt Hatch's scholarship tell us regarding his potential in a more advanced role? Interesting question. Yeah, Matt Hatch. I mean, Matt Hatch is one to watch this season. And again, another player that I've touched on the podcast many times. Of course, we all know his heroics when he came on and scored with his first touch in the A-League. That was, of course, that game against MacArthur FC. And this could be a big season for Matty Hatch. I think he'll be involved a lot more in the side. Obviously, Monty knows him very, very well coming up through the academy side. And I think that the deal to keep Matty Hatch on at the club just shows, the club are keen to give him a chance, and potentially he'll be another one of these young players to step up and have a big season, and potentially, I know it's early days, but potentially go on to bigger and better things. So keep an eye out for Matt Hatch this year in the A-League. This is an interesting question. Again, we've got this in from Instagram. Thank you so much for sending this one in. If you didn't support the Central Coast Mariners, who would you support? And I mean, I know this is such like a lame answer, but legit, I'm being like serious. Like I would still absolutely watch the league because I just love the A-League in general. But I wouldn't support anyone. I wouldn't. I really, really wouldn't. And, I think back to, when the talk of Mariners folding and talk of Manchester United moving Mariners to Sydney, I think of like, what would it be like if this team that I've been supporting literally like since day one when I was, 9-10 years old, imagine if they just weren't here anymore. And it's hard. It would be heartbreaking, to be honest, because they've been such a big part of my life for so long now. But yeah, I can't see myself supporting anyone else. Maybe I would support a new team that would come in, maybe someone like a Canberra United or a Wollongong if they came in, a new side. But again, I think just my answer would be that I would absolutely watch the A-League. I do already watch all of the games, and I just wouldn't necessarily barrack for any particular team. I would just be a neutral. So, yeah, an interesting one though, that's for sure. Final question here. We'll do one more. Hey, does Ruan Tongik's Socceroos experience still have weight coming into this season? Another good question sent in here. And obviously Ruan Tongik called up to the Socceroos. Only got limited minutes, of course, in the Socceroos squad. But it just goes to show that how far he's come. And he's spent so much time at various clubs around the country, and to really settle in here at the Central Coast and see him have such a great season last year was just so good to see. Great to see that he's really comfortable here now at the Mariners, and I think that experience, the fact that he is now considered one of the top defenders in the A-League now, like he's at that level now. He's just going to be at a different level this season. He's going to teams are really going to be wary of this Mariners defense now, knowing that, that centre-back pairing of Rolls and Tongik, and then, one of the best keepers in Mark Birighitti. This is a hard defense to break down now. It really, really is. So, and Tongik's Socceroos experience just helps with that. And hopefully he can get more caps in the future as well. But once again, guys, thank you so much for sending in those questions. And thank you again for tuning in to yet another episode of the Coast Watch Football Podcast. There is plenty of content dropping here on YouTube, or whether you're listening on a podcast platform as well. I do appreciate it a lot. So yeah, you can jump down into the description to find links to all of the social platforms to keep up with all of the content dropping from Coast Watch Football. Guys, the A-League is not too far away. It's just around the corner. So I hope you're as excited as I am as it all builds towards round one. Once again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, what's going on? I was drinking some tea before I record my podcast. Hey, you should go click these videos. Go click the videos. It's we're doing lots of A-League content, so come be a part of the journey, man. Oh, fuck, it's way too hot, dude.